Hey ANPers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is ANP1 lecture test 4, video 1. So here we are. Here is the test for Noteset for version 11. And let me grab a Post-it. Let's see, I want a super sticky Post-it so that it will stay. And we will keep track of which video we are on because I lose track in my head after about 10 seconds later. So ANP1 lecture test 4. So this one's on muscles. Video 1. And we're starting with Noteset page 2 and might do how we did the last one, where we do one Noteset page per video. It's a little shorter for video, but not always. I mean, some pages take, 6 minutes to cover, and some pages take 20 minutes to cover, and so just keep it limited though. All right. So there are 3 types of muscle, and let's see what background photos I had going on. All right, as a review, there are 4 types of tissue. Epithelial tissue lines surfaces and is glands. And there's connective tissue, which is the filler, neural tissue, which is your nerves and the nerve helper cells, and muscular tissue. Muscular tissue, there are 3 types, and you need to know all this information. Of course, skeletal muscles are attached to the skeleton, mostly, and they are considered voluntary, although hiccups are not voluntary, but the skeletal muscles generally are voluntary. Cardiac is heart muscle. Cardio means heart. And this is considered involuntary, but you can influence your heart rate, can't you? You can think exciting thoughts like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna fail this test and it's gonna be the end and everything is gonna be ruined. And the worst case scenarios you build up in your head, the more your heart beats, right? The faster your heart beats. And so you can also take a deep breath and think calm thoughts and find your happy place, the kids or the beach or the dog, something happy and calm. And then your heart responds by slowing down, and we'll talk more about that by the end of the semester in great detail. And then again, more next semester too. So it's involuntary, but you are able to influence your heart rate by thinking stressful thoughts or thinking calmer thoughts. Smooth muscle lines, it's not that it is the lining, the epithelium is the lining. All of the tubes are lined with epithelium. But the smooth muscle is in the wall of lots of the tubes in the body, the blood vessels, the digestive tract, the respiratory tract, and these are also considered involuntary. But they are also influenced by your emotions. Like if you blush, that's the smooth muscles of the blood vessels of your face dilating and bringing more blood to the surface of your face, which is what makes it change color. So I've never been a blusher. Every now and then someone will embarrass me enough that I'll blush, and I mark it on the calendar because it's maybe once a year. It's usually my husband because he knows he knows me pretty well. So. Now, let's try that again. Which tissue types are excitable? Jazz hands. That's right, the neural and the muscular. And we will talk about that in great detail. Actually, let's cover the basic concepts. Let's whiteboard. Let's see, screen, white screen. There we go. And then let's pen color We'll go with red. Okay, so we have talked about the cell. We talked about the cell in chapter 3, which was on test 1. So here's our cell. And we said that the cell was relatively negative inside the cell and relatively positive out. Those are pluses outside the cell. I can't draw with a mouse. Okay, and this difference in charge across the membrane is the trans means across, like the Trans-Siberian Railroad goes across Siberia. The transmembrane, because it's across the membrane, sorry, I'm writing with a mouse. Give me a second. Transmembrane potential. And it's the potential, you recall we talked about the 2 different kinds of energy. There's kinetic energy, which is the energy of motion. Kinetic energy. There it goes. And then there's potential energy. I am maintaining the potential of this marker by holding it against the forces that pull on it, commonly known as gravity. So we have potential energy here and the fact that I'm holding it against gravity. Now I am burning energy to do this. And when I let go, that potential energy is converted into kinetic energy, the energy of motion. Okay, so the potential is potential energy, it's stored energy. So here we have transmembrane potential, which is the difference in charges across the cell membrane. So what was the fluid inside the cell called? And what's the fluid outside the cell called? Extracellular fluid. It doesn't even look like an E. It still doesn't look like any. It's extracellular fluid or interstitial fluid. There are differences, but not that we need to know for this class or NP2. Okay, and so what maintains this potential energy is this structure right here. What is the name of this structure? It is the cell membrane. What are the other names of the cell membrane? The plasma membrane, and the older one, plasma lemma. And we are going to keep track of that plasma lemma term because we are going to have plenty of, we're going to play with that term. Plasma lemma. That's an M. And lemma means husk. So it's like cytoplasm husk. It's the husk of the cytoplasm. So it's the membrane around the cytoplasm, plasma lemma. Okay, and studied in the membrane are proteins, membrane proteins. And some of them have holes down the middle, and like a donut, and these are channel proteins. And some of them allow stuff to cross the membrane one way or the other. You may recall we talked about leak channels. Leak channels are always open, but they do have specificity. So a potassium leak channel only allows potassium to leak through. A sodium leak channel only allows sodium to leak through. And some of these channels have a gate on them, and they are gated channels. And the gated channels they have specificity. So if it's a sodium channel, it only allows sodium through. Potassium channel, it only allows potassium through. There are some that allow sodium or potassium through, like the sodium-potassium ATPase pump. But these gated channels are only opened in response to a specific stimulus. So some of these will be chemical stimuli, and the chemical stimuli is that the right chemical binds to it, and that opens it and allows the ion to go through. And some of them will be the electrical voltage. When the electrical voltage reaches a certain number, that will open some of the channels. The channels are gated by either a chemical or a certain electrical voltage, which we can measure. So we've got numbers for those. So one or the other, but either way, they still have specificity. They still only allow certain ions through. So, okay, so that was a quick review of stuff you need to know to have any hope of making sense of this chapter. Chapter 4, it does have some complicated concepts, and we are digging into them. So dig right in. If you're not ever frustrated, then that's a bonus, but frustration is a standard response to this, and it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you need to pull out your grit and your positive mindset and your growth mindset and just keep studying. You can do it. Coffee helps. I put cinnamon in the coffee today. There was a HEB has online coupons, and there was buy something that we would have needed anyway and get one free McCormick spicy thing. Anyway, one of them was the whole nutmegs. So I've always wanted whole nutmegs. So I got a little thing of whole nutmegs, and so I grated some nutmeg into my coffee. So fancy. I'm calling it my pumpkin spice coffee because I put cinnamon and nutmeg in it. That counts. Does that count? Totally counts. And it has I'm off topic. Okay, back on topic. So there are 3 types of muscles which we talked about. We're on the top of Noteset page 2. And I had this little picture off to the side, so we drew that and talked about that. 3 types of muscle are skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. You took some notes on that. And then the skeletal muscles are each considered an organ. So the organ of the skeletal muscle contains the skeletal muscle tissue, the nerves, the connective tissue, and the blood vessels that feed the muscle. So those are all wrapped up together. Your biceps brachii is an organ. Your triceps brachii is an organ. Okay. And the functions are to move you around, skeletal movement, to maintain body position, the muscles of your back hold you upright. To support soft tissues, like your abdomen holds your gut in and all that good stuff. Guards entrances and exits, that's one way to put it. Maintains body temperature if you're cold, and I know it's South Texas, so that doesn't actually happen here. It's October when I'm recording this. It's like 89 degrees outside. But if you were to be in a place where it actually gets cold, your skeletal muscles will contract and you will shiver, and that will warm you up, and your blood will distribute that warmth to the rest of your body. Once you get too cold, then they stop distributing to your fingers and your toes and your nose, and they keep all the heat in the middle where you're less likely to lose it. But what makes a lot of the body temperature is the skeletal muscle contractions. And the muscles actually also store nutrient reserves, which we're kind of going to gloss over until we mention them briefly next semester. So not doing much with that. All right, so I'm in the way. There we go. So epi, E-P-I, means above or upon. Myo, M-Y-O, means muscle. So the whole muscle, like any of these muscles or the biceps brachii, is surrounded by an epimysium because it's above or upon the whole muscle. So there's a picture of the whole muscle right here, whole muscle. Okay. And it is collagen fibers that surround the whole muscle. the perimysium, peri, P-E-R-I, means around. Like you put a periscope up to look all the way around. I don't have room here, but and myostyle means muscle. So inside the skeletal muscle, in between these bits, is perimysium. And they're surrounding these little bits. Each of these is a muscle fascicle. So here is a picture of one muscle fascicle, and it's surrounded by perimysium. So all the muscle fascicles together make up the whole muscle, which is surrounded by epimysium. So you're going to have like a layer of epimysium and then a layer of perimysium before you get to the muscle fascicle. And on the lab test, if they want to ask you epimysium, they'll ask way out by the edge of the muscle. If they want to ask perimysium, they'll ask in between muscle fascicles where there absolutely cannot be epimysium. So each muscle fascicle is surrounded by perimysium. The fascicle is a bundle of muscle cells, and the muscle cells are also called muscle fibers because they're long and skinny. They look like threads. So. And then each muscle cell, each individual muscle fiber. So here's one muscle fiber here. Whoops, I was trying to put a triangle on it. Here's one muscle fiber here, and here it is blown up, and it's surrounded by endomysium, and endo means within, endomysium. So it's endo, it's within the fascicle is endomysium. Around the fascicle is perimysium, and above and upon the whole friggin' muscle is the epimysium. I didn't curse, yay. And endomysium, perimysium is collagen and elastic fibers, blood vessels, and nerves around the fascicle. The endomysium is elastic connective tissue around each individual muscle cell or muscle fiber. Because the muscle cells / muscle fibers are excitable, they have to be electrically isolated from each other. So that's what the endomysium does. And then the muscle cells are muscle fibers. Or muscle fibers are muscle cells. And then you have myosatellite cells, so satellite. And they are muscle stem cells, and they assist in muscle repair. A tendon is collagen fibers of the epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium combined. So the tendon at the end here are all of these epimysiums, epimysia, perimysia, and also the endomysium around each muscle cell all combine. So once the cells are gone, you've got all that connective tissue left, and that's the tendon. And an aponeurosis, well, the collagen fibers of those. Okay. Aponeurosis is just a flat sheet of tendon. We will have two aponeuroses. One is SIS, two is SES. We will have two aponeuroses in lab. First will be on top of the head, so that will be the epicranial aponeurosis, and it's a flat sheet of tendon that goes across the top of your head. And then the other is on the bottom of your foot, and what's the regional name for the bottom of the foot? Plantar, the plantar region. So the aponeurosis, the flat tendon on the bottom of your foot, is the plantar aponeurosis. It used to be called the plantar fascia. They changed the name, but I think if it's inflamed, it's still called plantar fasciitis because no one wants to say plantar aponeurositis. Well, they might. Give them time. Okay, so that's what I have for page 2, and that was quirky enough. So we're going to call this, where did my list go? All right, there it is. We're going to call this A&P 1, Lecture Test 4, Video 1. Thanks for always for tuning in. I appreciate virtually seeing you here. I know this is not an easy class, and y'all have made it. Y'all are halfway through the material. Do you realize that? We've taken 3 of 6 tests, and we've taken 2 of 4 lab tests. So you are halfway done. You know half of it. But we are not halfway through the grade, because this class is final heavy We are not halfway through the grade. We won't be halfway through the grade for a while. We're still at, the moment I record this, we're at 450 of 1,000 points. So we're close to halfway through the grade, but we're not quite there yet. So keep on keeping on, just keep studying, right? As Dory would say, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep on keeping on. And I know that life is overwhelming right now, and this class is overwhelming, and I'm recording this in 2020 during COVID times, and 2020 is overwhelming, and COVID is overwhelming. Just do your best every day. That's it. Doing your best is not a sprint to burnout, right? Do your best. This class is a marathon. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to exercise to keep your brain working, to keep your body moving so you're not in too much pain to sit and study. So this class, you have to juggle everything else and taking care of yourself and learning as much as you can, right? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to burn out and flame out, and then you won't be here. You'll have to, it takes longer to recover if you let yourself burn out. So take breaks when you need to. Just do your best every day. And that includes taking care of yourself. You deserve it. Okay. Dr. J out.